oh, well, you know, they just keep dragging it out, dragging it out, dragging it out. No fan club today.
It's me.
I went for an X-ray. But now we're concerned that I'm still coughing.
Are they going in for the biopsy?
Yeah. They're going to, when I schedule it, I didn't get it for you.
What are those things, the pearl drop or something?
And they don't do anything. They last 10 minutes and then they start coughing.
Like a shampoo or something?
Yeah, it's little. They look like little honey bees. They're like tiny little things that look like color. Okay. Well, it starts being the way it is.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Report of any executive sessions.
Yes, as per section 8-A-1 of the Sunshine Act, an executive session was held on Wednesday, November 13, 2024 at 11:15 a.m. to discuss personnel matters regarding specific individuals.
And before public comment, I just want to mention the passing of Thomas Saints Sr. of Tuscarora Fire Company. He passed away the other morning. Tom was a past vice president of the Schuylkill County Fire Chiefs Association, past president of the Schuylkill County Firefighters Association. He served as a state police, and he was also, I think, a fire marshal too. And he was a mentor for many people in the fire service. So just have a moment of silence for Tom. Okay, thank you. Let's move on with public comment. Morning.
My name is Laura Krzyzanowski. I live in the city of Pottsville. Yesterday, the governor of the elections from Chester County pointed out on national news, excuse me, that nobody is required to follow the law because the principles of rule of law no longer apply to the United States, and that she is willing to go to jail for counting illegal votes. It must be pointed out that Governor Josh Shapiro, excuse me, actually signed an executive order stating that illegal persons in Pennsylvania who are living here are allowed to vote if they get an identification from the Department of Welfare or whatever. We see in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, that we really don't have a rule of law either. Because what happens is we have a city solicitor who is allowed to propose an illegal act with the sewer authority, And no one says, hey, maybe we should get another solicitor. Instead, we have someone who represents him in court for 20 years of my attending city council meetings. They have never complied with the Sunshine Law. But the very lawyer who writes the complaint for the sewer authority stating that what Attorney Pellish proposed was illegal is going to defend Attorney Pellish and the city in Judge Hale's courtroom. Contrary to Article 1, Section 11 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, where right and justice is to be administered, on a technicality, the Hale court dismissed the illegality of the city, claiming a technicality of one of the 4,000 rules of court, so that the people of Pottsville have no right and justice administered without sale, denial, or delay. I would agree with the governor of the election board in Chester County that we really don't have a rule of law in the United States. As a matter of fact, it would appear that we are number 44 in the world for rule of law. That is absolutely very interesting, because we just run around talking about how free we are, when in fact you can't really go anywhere or do anything without law. So I would say that basically in Pennsylvania, the Bar Association has converted the judicial system into a monopoly, the very monopoly that William Penn asked the king to set up Pennsylvania for, to get away from the draconian legal systems that were implemented in England. We are now back there, big time. And you can see it all. And, the other thing is my assessment of Donald Trump, Elon Musk. Yeah, see, and here we go. The Constitution says there's nothing that would allow this body to limit freedom of speech and abridge freedom of speech. We all take this oath of office to uphold the Constitution, and then we go around and violate it. Unbelievable. At any rate, from what I can tell, what Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and these guys are going to be supervising is the bankruptcy of the United States, morally and physically. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Morning, George.
Good morning.
Morning.
George Stankovich, Palo Alto. Once again, we see that, politicians, we're going to see what dictatorship is going to be all about, because we're going back to old ways of doing things. It's either my way or no way. And I'm tired of this. Laura and other ones have brought up so many times that we got to get back to if we're going to follow a law, we can't change it just because the person that's in the higher position wants to change it. It's what the people want. And what the people want is freedom of speech. They want all these freedom of religion, freedom be able to speak out when you can speak out. Most people in the United States, and Pennsylvania for sure, are afraid to speak out because they're worried about Big Brother coming to your door and throwing you in jail. That's what it's all about. And I mean, if you can't speak freely, if you're doing it in the proper way, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Now I see this, we had the problem in the west end of our state. Now we're going to have the problem here in St. Clair. You know what? If the air or the wind is blowing the right way, we're going to be in the same boat they're in. I see this, they're allowing things to happen, and there was people there at that meeting at St. Clair. I wasn't one of them, but I know they were there at that meeting complaining about this, and they're bringing other stuff in. DEP says that, oh, well, we're checking into it. We're checking into it. Yeah, they checked in the Pine Grove area and those area, Higgins and all them, for years. And same thing, over and over and over. And you know what it's all about? Money. Money. How much money we can get out of it. It's ridiculous. You're ruining people's lives. You're ruining their homes that they paid for. And what are we doing about it? We're just sitting around and letting them do whatever they want to do. It's time for people to speak up. I'm tired of this, and I haven't even mentioned what I usually mention, senior citizens and veterans losing their homes. It's ridiculous. I'm tired of this. Something has to stop, and the stop has to be now and get back to reality and human lives. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Let's move on to the meeting, 911 communications, Morning, Scott.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, sir.
I have 5 items for approval. Number 1 is enter agreement with Convey 911 Baltimore for language translation services, cost of 95 cents per minute, plus a one-time setup fee of $1,500. The next one is approval for a 24/7, 365 software support agreement with Infor Systems. That term is January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2025, cost is $63,386.79. Enter into an agreement with Greens Communications of Pottsville for maintenance of the net clock time synchronization, a cost of $4,200. That term of the contract is from November 1, 2024 to October 31, 2025. Next one is to enter an agreement with Motorola Solutions of Chicago for emergency call works phone system, on-site and remote system software and support. That term is January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2025. The cost is $68,269.66. And the last one is an agreement with Environmental Research Institute of Redlands, California for GIS mapping maintenance, and that term is January 1, 2025 to December 31, 2025 at a cost of $15,131.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Agricultural conservation,
Oh, he's not here today. I thought you talked to Boots about presenting.
Yeah, I'll read it down, okay. Agricultural, approval of the agreement for sale and purchase of agricultural conservation easement between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the County of Schuylkill jointly in perpetuity for a total purchase price of $162,200, of which the county contribution total is $65,000. The sales agreement is for the Angela and Joshua Meck Farm, UPI number 28-04-0009-000 and 28-04-000.000, consisting of 81.1 acres in South Manhattan Township.
thank you. Mental health,
Good morning. We're asking for approval to enter into an agreement with Susquehanna Software Incorporated to provide a one-time implementation of the software at $20,000 and $5,250 per quarter for the annual subscription and maintenance from November 1st of 2024 to June 30th, 2025. At this point, the cap is not to exceed $30,500. Thank you.
veterans office,
Good morning, Commissioners. Today I'm requesting approval to award a contract in the amount of $64,600 to Trivet Contracting Company Incorporated for a CDBG ADA improvement project in Pine Grove Township, and approval of a change order to a demolition contract with Northeast Industrial Services for $500, increasing the contract from $15,425 to $15,925. This is for removal of debris created from trailer removal done by West Penn Township. This is a CDBG demolition project. Thank you.
children and youth,
Morning, Bob. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today we have one item. This is a request for approval of an agreement with Dynamic Counseling Associates LLC out of Easton, Pennsylvania for their Treatment Program 3 counseling services. That comes with a per diem rate of $77.57 with a term period of October 25th, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. And this agreement has to do with counseling services received by residents at the detention center at the Northampton County Juvenile Justice Center.
planning and zoning,
Morning, Commissioners. Approval is requested
of amendments to the Schuylkill County zoning ordinance and the subdivision and land development ordinance pertaining to solar. The first hearing was conducted on November 13th, 2024. At the hearing, the Board of Commissioners referred revisions back to the Schuylkill County Planning Commission. The County Planning Commission considered the public comments and made additional recommendations on revised amendments. A second hearing on the revisions will be conducted on November 27th, 2024 at 9 a.m. prior to the regular Commissioners meeting. This motion is pending the outcome of the second public hearing on these amendments.
Tax claim, Barry, you know you for that?
Approval of the attached list of 3 repository sales pursuant to 72 PS 5060625. 11913 from Kelly Schuylkill, 38-6-219 to the Borough of Ashland, and 57-4-125 or 124 to the Borough of Palo Alto.
Attorney's office?
Where's the happy birthday, Haley?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Commissioners, and good morning, everybody. I have the Treasurer's Report to present for October 2024. Ending balance in all accounts, $99,713,757.87. And then I also will remind the public that the 2025 dog licenses will start going on sale December 1st, and we'll get a press release out to them for that information.
Thank you. County Administration.
On behalf of the Schuylkill County Industrial Development Authority, approval to appoint Roy Klein, Orangeburg, and to reappoint James Pepper of Pittman to the Schuylkill County Industrial Development Authority Board of Directors for a 5-year term from January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2029. The next one, I think Connor's here to do that. Connor? Yep.
Connor Matz, MIS. Approval requested to apply for the federal fiscal year 2023 state and local cybersecurity grant program. 4 total cybersecurity items are included in the grant. 2 renewals are of current items. First is the Intrusion Detection Service and Security Awareness Service. The 2 new items are Exposure Management and Asset Intelligence Program and Vulnerability Management Solution. Applications are due Friday, November 22nd, so motion requested due to the grant deadline.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second. On the question?
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Heatherington?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioners, before we get into the next item on the preliminary budget, I'd just like the board to indulge me for some opening comments. The financial team this morning is here to present the 2025 preliminary budget and to request board action to open the preliminary budget for public review. The county has been challenged with proposed budget deficits for the past several years in the operating its $200 million business. But through the application of sound financial practices, including regularly scheduled budget reviews and prudent utilization of the county's reserve funds, we've been able to forego major property tax increases. However, because of state mandated programs and the associated need to increase local financial support for those programs, the construction of a sound, balanced budget remains problematic. The Finance Office utilizes a 3 to 5 year baseline trend analysis for each department's budget request and has brought all department and agency accounts in line with the board's zero-based budgeting strategy. However, even with the use of these financial management practices, operational costs continue to escalate, widening the gap between revenues and expenses, creating what is called a structural deficit. The general fund this year, that's being addressed today, has a planned expenditure for the budget of 2025 estimated at $87,041,048. To complicate the issue further, revenues are not keeping pace, which now creates a financing gap of approximately $13.5 million. However, I would like to remind the board that the financial team began this process with requests from the offices that would have resulted in a $22.1 million deficit. And here are some of the drivers that are negatively impacting the 2025 budgets. Increases in health care of about 11.8%. Increase in the general fund contribution to the 911 Operations Center of $1,378,296. Estimated Teamsters arbitration settlement of about $696,038. Increase in the general fund contribution to Children and Youth Agency of about 6.73% or $317,275. Increase in expenditure for reassessment appeals, $451,200. Commitment by the board of about $1 million to the proposed fire training facility. And this year we will have no more transfers from the CARES Act or ARPA funding to reimburse the general fund for eligible expenditures. While the county maintains a healthy fund balance to budget the 25 budget, the financial team has recommended a property tax increase for 2025. As we move forward to the new budget year, we are recommending that the board continue to review its positions regarding general operational activities, which include consider a hiring freeze all travel except mandatory certification training, right-size operations through furlough in non-core areas, eliminate and consolidate positions, utilize more part-time employees, consider outsourcing some operational functions, and initiate new fees for service. Over the next month, we will continue to review operations for additional savings. Based on the present schedule, a final budget will be presented on December 18th for the board's final action. And at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Boober to present 2025 preliminary budget resolution. And I will have some closing comments at the end.
Commissioners, before I begin reading the preliminary budget resolution, I just would like to add on to Gary's comments by saying the preliminary budget that we're presenting today, that's incorporated into the preliminary resolution, includes a 3.5 tax increase. Preliminary budget resolution number 11-20-24. To establish the proposed 2025 real estate millage at 19.48 mils to include 18.88 mils for the 2025 general fund account, 0.60 mils for the 2025 funded debt account. To establish the proposed 2025 per capita tax at $5. To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget for the general fund with proposed legislative authorization to expend public funds for office departmental functions within the established budget parameters at an aggregate expenditure limit set at $87,041,048 to be offset by projected revenues of $81,863,189 and supplemented by approximately $5,177,859 from the general fund unassigned fund balance. To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget for the funded debt account with proposed legislative authorization to expend funds in an amount of $2,079,671 for debt service and to be offset by projected revenues plus a carryover restricted fund balance of $2,079,671. To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget for the Capital Reserve Fund account with proposed legislative authorization to expend public funds for projects within the established budget parameters at an aggregate expenditure limit set at $1 million to be offset by projected revenues plus a carryover restricted fund balance of $1 million. To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget for the Internal Service Fund, Workers' Compensation, with proposed legislative authorization to expend public funds for workers' compensation claims and administrative expenses within the established budget parameters and an aggregate expenditure limit set at $465,000 to be offset by projected revenues of $465,000. To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget for certain special revenue fund accounts with proposed legislative authorization to expend public funds for the office departmental functions within the established budget parameters to be offset by projected revenues or by projected revenues plus a carryover restricted fund balance as follows. Local use fund expenditures $1,801,500, revenues $800,600. Liquid fuels, $3,244,482, revenues $782,500. Demolition, expenditures $3,455,250, revenues $1,499,000. Farmland preservation, expenditures $597,180, revenues $190,000. Human Services Complex, expenditures $342,207, revenues $236,506. 911, expenditures $9,165,124 to be offset by the same amount in revenues. Taxes reassessment, expenditures $4,134,400 to be offset by revenues of $100,000. Other agency funds, expenditures $3,967,537, revenues $4,008,437. Office of Senior Services, expenditures $6,139,069 to be offset by revenues of the same amount. Drug and alcohol, expenditures $4,428,781 be offset by revenues of $3,966,489. Mental health, expenditures $8,256,325 be offset by the same amount in revenues. Children and youth, expenditures $30,639,284 to be offset by revenues of the same amount. Domestic relations, expenditures $2,822,087 be offset with revenues of $2,987,589. To adopt the 2025 preliminary budget for other special revenue fund accounts with proposed legislative authorization to expend public funds for special programs such as aging advisory, offender supervision, SCBG program, affordable housing, COLANs, DUI, other escrow, conduit, Schuylkill County Transportation Authority, Marcellus Shell, Emergency Solutions Grant, within the established parameters at an aggregate expenditure limit of $20,508,587 and to be offset by projected revenues plus a carryover restricted fund balance of $20,508,587.
So the biggest drivers of this, the 3.5 mils, is the healthcare, or expenses to unfunded mandates and 911. And our annual raises and all that. With 911, do you want to explain a little bit the funding, what happened? Because people have asked me. We were under one funding formula. The state changed it for 2024. Under the old formula, I think Scott left already, what were we supposed to get?
Based on
Population
Now it's
density.
population density versus population.
Yeah, it was based on population, then it went to population density.
Which favors.
So under the old formula, we would have got, what, close to 2 million in funding.
Yes, we were short on that, and it was also based on sometimes on expenditures. So over the period of time, Scott and the team down there have been very aggressive at updating our equipment, and our revenue was based on what we spent. That has changed.
Yeah, so we saw an increase in funding in 2024 of $186,000. And now that formula is revenue, so I get $186,000 in extra revenue for it, other than projected from the new old formula. But then this sunsets, I think Gary, you were talking about it being sunny sunsets at the end of 2025, so nobody knows what that funding will do. The healthcare, we negotiated that down, they actually wanted a 14% increase. We got that down to about 11.8, and next year we're going to look at, when the contract comes up, shopping the insurance around and try to find better rates. Because that has been happening in some areas. $3 million in that. So, and there were some areas we didn't want to cut. The 3% raises for people, the county employees, when there's inflation of 20% out there. And I don't know if you have anything to say on the budget. Or who says?
No, the 911 is very disturbing. We looked at similar class 4 county, Washington, Beaver, and they got a huge increase in their 911 funding. We got $100,000. We were expecting about $2 million based on what the other, and when we put the question, we even had our delegation question it, and they pretty much got lip service out of the council. So, but once again, it's geared on population density, which favors Bucks County, Montgomery County, Allegheny County. And to me, people are people. It doesn't matter if you live in rural Ring County or live in downtown Philly. A person's a person. But this new formula benefits the larger cities.
So I think that's one of the drivers.
Yeah, and again, over the last 12 budget cycles that I've been here, taxes have only been increased 3 times. Again, in 12 years' time, as you know, in your home budgets and so forth, in 12 years, a lot of things have increased, and a lot of drivers of what was just said here today. Naturally 911, children and youth, our prison system, the same thing that are mandated that we need to make sure that we take care of over those years. And again, this board and the financial team has always worked diligently to try to make sure we find those revenues. And over the 12 years, as far as expenditures, especially on trying to save money, especially with the buildings that we have in energy reducing and on the windows and what we heat the place with, we've been very constant over those years to try to reduce those expenses on making sure that the building is operating and so forth. So with that, again, it's the time, and also with COVID, if anyone knows, and I know my business was impacted over that year, and it continues to try to do the catch up. And basically, we got some funds to oversee it, and that was the purpose of it, to make sure that things didn't impact the people of the county. But to move forward and to look towards the future, some of these things that we need to catch up with on those types of things.
Okay, and then just in closing, sir, I would like to thank especially the Board of Commissioners, Mr. Paul Boover, Mr. Chris Kern, for their efforts in developing the budget document that we have today, and to thank the courts, the elected officials, and our department managers for their cooperation. And in summary, the budget, as you know, is a fluid document, and the board has the latitude to make necessary adjustments as required. The structural deficit, as mentioned earlier, will only continue to threaten the financial position of the county, and there are no other options but to initiate action to slow the increase of the cost of government services and to increase revenues. We need to work with our legislative delegation in seeking alternatives to the real estate tax as our only major source of revenue. We also need to maintain and redefine our focus on core functions and priorities. The unsustainability of wage and benefit taxes has to be addressed if the county is to maintain long-term fiscal stability. And now, having said that, gentlemen, I would like to offer, ask your approval to request to establish the proposed 2025 real estate millage for capital tax and to adopt the 2025 preliminary budget as set forth in accordance with the resolution 11/2024 that was read and attached. And I'm presenting a motion at this time.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
On the question?
Commissioner Fedora,
Yes.
Commissioner Heatherington,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
And in between now and when we adopt the budget fully, we're gonna still look at more ways to try to shape it.
That is correct.
I'd just like to say that to Paul Boover and Gary Bender, and Chris, they put a lot of work into it. It's just not been easy. It wasn't easy. When I got here, it hasn't, like Mr. Hess said, COVID didn't help things. Inflationary pressures, we're trying to keep the pension fund solvent. So I think these gangs work extra hard. I can, but once in a while, I come in on a Sunday to get something out of my office. Oftentimes to see Paul Boober's car and Gary Bender's car parked in my stuff. Thank you for your dedication.
Have we had conversations on the weekend?
I would like to make one more comment. I know some things were spread that the county is in poor financial structure. Again, over those years, I really can't see that and see the finance of it, that has been strong. Over the 12 budgets that I've been here, we never had to go into January or March in the early part of the year to get a tax anticipation note to make sure that the budget was taken care of and so forth, that it carried us through. And that was the due diligence of our unassigned fund balance, of using that unassigned fund balance the best that we could to make sure looking forward, because you don't have that crystal ball to look to see what it is. And I've always said many times, I remember a number of years ago, when the state couldn't get their budget done, and it was well into September, and we had our vendors basically looking where they were gonna get their payments from. And we could actually sustain that, where many counties had to go out and get a note on that to carry them over. So over those years, it's been that way, and again, with the help of administration and finance, they definitely directed us in the right course and the best course of action. So with that also, thank you very much. So.
If I may, Commissioners, I have a couple additional comments to Commissioner Hess's comments. I just want to emphasize one of the best objective ways to assess the county finances is when you go through a bond rating call. That is objectively based, and based off the last couple bond rating calls we had, Schuylkill County has gotten the third best out of 17 rating categories. So that's a testament to the financial leadership as well as the decision making that we are a stable organization and we're a good investment for the people of Schuylkill County as well too, and that's reflected in our finances. I would also like to mention that at the conclusion of today's meeting, a copy of the budget document will be available in the Chief Clerk's office for public inspection. And then also too, there will be information available out on the county's website. We anticipate having that available probably sometime on Friday. You're welcome.
And last week during public comment, Paul, the comment was made that the county was bankrupt. But based on what I'm hearing from Mr. Hess, and what you're telling me, that's not remotely.
That is not true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the only thing I want to say too is the reassessments out there, it made budgeting for this year a lot more difficult because you're limited in 2026 to what you can do with the reassessment. But it brought to my attention that some municipalities and school districts are blaming their tax increase on the reassessment. The reassessment has nothing to do with the tax increase. It is revenue neutral. What they do after that, that is up to them. But any municipality or school district that's saying they're doing a tax increase this year because of the reassessment, that is not. The reassessment is revenue neutral. Okay, so we're ready to move on. Finance Officer, Paul.
Commissioners, I just want to mention that on your agenda, there are 9 budget adjustments, and the budget adjustments have been posted outside the boardroom.
Human Resources.
Good morning, Commissioners. We have in tax assessment, the promotion of Tanya Kovach to Deputy Chief Assessor. The rate is $38,570, effective 11/25/24. She's coming from the field appraiser. In the prison, we have the appointment of Braden Nicodomsky as a correction officer. The rate is 23.0730, effective 11/25/24. Rate is per the contract. 2 items in children and youth. The termination of Devin Motel as a county caseworker 2. And that rate was 23.1965, and effective date 11/14/24. And also the promotion of Daniel Trojan as a county caseworker 2, rate is 22.3836, effective date 12/2/24, and employees come from county caseworker 1, the rate is per the union contract. In addition, we have an informational item in the public defender's office, the appointment of Stephanie Hilbish as an investigator. Effective date 12/2/24, the rate is per the union contract. All those appointments are pending drug test and physical where appropriate, and all actions involving salary or positions being created are pending salary board approval.
I have a motion for the tax assessment president and the 2 children.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second?
On the question?
Commissioner Fedora,
Yes.
Commissioner Heatherington.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Any new business has?
I have one other,
Sorry.
one other item here. Requesting approval of the side agreement with SEIU Local 668 to continue to pay retention bonuses to employees with some modifications from the previously agreed to procedure. The changes include changing the payments from quarterly to quarterly after the fact and removing the end date of the program. These payments are funded by the state, and the agreement will be terminated if that funding ends.
Thank you. Go ahead, Susan, sorry.
Commissioners, thank you for giving the opportunity to provide a briefing on the draft hazard mitigation plan. This hazard mitigation plan is a requirement of FEMA. It must be updated every 5 years. More than talking about it in a very government way, I think it's important to concentrate on the fact that this is our strategy to minimize or avoid property damage to homes and businesses, to reduce business interruption and revenue loss, reduce emergency response and revenue costs, attract new business and residents, protect the resources which make Schuylkill County special, and build a sense of place and peace of mind. A hazard mitigation process takes 4 steps. We work to organize, build a core planning team, gather data, we assess our risks, identify the risks, we develop a strategy, and then we work to implement it, which is the most important part of the planning process. The planning team for this plan update included the county staff. This is a joint project of my office, the planning office, emergency management, which John Blickley, who is not able to be here today, and also the conservation district with Wayne Lehman, who is here today. Also, the core planning team is a group of about 30-odd individuals, ranging from folks from the emergency services to people with expertise on the environment, to business leaders and the like, and utility representatives. And lastly, planning partners, particularly municipal representatives. This is a multi-jurisdictional plan, which means that the municipalities, if they want to, can choose to participate, and then there are certain requirements that they have to meet for participation. As part of the risk assessment, we look at a wide variety of natural and man-made hazards. We look at the range of magnitude, past occurrence, future occurrence, the vulnerability to populations, including special populations. You can see here that we've identified certain high, medium, and low risk hazards. I'm not going to read through that list, but you'll be able to see those in the plan. The plan this year includes hazard dashboards that will precede every discussion about a hazard. These hazard dashboards will present the complex data of the plan in a way that's easy to understand. It'll help decision makers to quickly spot patterns and insights from the plan, and will display the most important information that people will need for decision making. One of the other things that we do during the risk assessment is to identify the capabilities and understand capabilities. We look at funding availability from federal and state sources, but we also look at the capabilities of municipal officials and what may prevent mitigation actions from moving forward. Both the previous plan and this plan have found that limited staffing and limited funding are critical barriers to the implementation of hazard mitigation activities here, and that overall municipalities in Schuylkill County have low to moderate administrative and technical staff that are needed to conduct hazard mitigation activities. So in other words, do they have grant staff? Do they have engineers? Do they have, those are the types of technical provisions we're looking at. I want to run through a few notable findings on some of the high hazards. So one of the items that you look at, you can look at to assess your risk to blight, is to look at vacant housing. This is census data. So the census looks at vacant housing in terms of is it for sale, for rent, if it's been renovated, but then there's the other category in vacant housing. And this is a good indicator of what might be blighted. So here you'll see the municipalities with the highest other vacant housing as a percent of total vacant housing within the county. Below that, you'll see 2 pie charts. Schuylkill County has a 15% vacancy rate in residential units. This is higher than the state rate of 12%. In terms of impacts from blight, the things that we could anticipate or that we would want to mitigate are increased costs for municipal services from crime, arson, accidental fire, public nuisances, code enforcement related items, decreased property values, decreased tax revenues, and decreasing the ability of local governments to provide critical services. Cost to homeowners in terms of higher insurance premiums or poor quality of life. Businesses in or near blighted properties may be impacted by customers who are not interested in coming to their businesses. It discourages private investment, and the real estate market can become undermined. We've heard a lot about drought lately. So just to take a look at our impact, the market value of products in Schuylkill County, if you take a look at agricultural, cropland, and livestock poultry and their products, you can see we're at 236 million, 83 million, 153-ish million for market value of products within the county that could be impacted with drought situations. So obviously we see significant agricultural impact with economic impact of crop damage and inability to provide water to livestock. Water supply issues. Well water supplies about 20% of Schuylkill County's population. You may also see impacts for firefighting, water supply for firefighting, and impact to losses to recreation providers. It does contribute to conditions conducive to wildfires, and you could see revenue losses for authorities. In terms of dam failures, there's a 3.6 total replacement cost values of buildings that have exposure to dam failures. And there are 349 community lifelines within dam inundation areas within the county. Community lifelines is a FEMA term. It includes things like fire departments, police departments, government buildings, utilities, transportation facilities, those types of things. So impacts that you can see are damage to buildings and infrastructure, agricultural losses, business interruption, damage to public utilities. Flooding, 5.5% of the county's population lives within a 1% annual chance floodplain area, and 7% of the county's population lives within the 0.2% annual chance population. And you can see from the very high percentages of those percentages are senior citizens or people over 65. So things to consider are ability to shelter the senior population, ability to rescue senior population. In Schuylkill County, properties have received about $15.5 million in loss payments from the National Flood Insurance Program, with Pine Grove Borough receiving about half of those payments. And of the county's community lifelines, close to 60% are located within the floodplain. So if you think about that, if there's a flood, there's damage to critical services like fire departments, like law enforcement, like government buildings. What kind of impact does that have on critical services? So the types of hazard impacts that we can see is a potential $18 million in building inventory loss, about $519 million in wage loss, impacts to the tax base, damage to public utilities, and agricultural losses. Hazardous materials, we looked at fixed air facilities. To the right is a chart showing municipalities with the greatest number of fixed air facilities. These are facilities that have extremely hazardous substances that are hazardous in and of themselves, or are kept in such quantity that they rise to the level of being extremely hazardous. We look at roads and rail lines and the pipeline distribution within the county. Look no further than the incident on 61 to understand that the impacts can include loss of roadway use, loss of transportation services, impact to critical municipal emergency services, and business interruption. This is the first year that the state has required us to include opioid use as a hazard within the plan. So Pennsylvania Department of Health data shows that Schuylkill County has one of the higher rates of opioid overdose mortality, with 34.2 deaths per 100,000 residents, which is up from the previous period when it was at 14.5. The share of fentanyl overdose deaths rose, and the heroin overdose deaths plateaued. Overall overdose mortalities in the county nearly doubled in the decade between 2012 and 2022. Some of the impacts that you can see with that is unscheduled worker absenteeism, reduced productivity, exits from the labor force, and lost wages. From the study from University of Pittsburgh, the county lost $13.3 million in wages due to an opioid use disorder, which is a downward trend. The core planning team worked on developing a vision and goals. The vision for the county in this plan is that Schuylkill County is a thriving, resilient county where those that live, work, and play here benefit from partnerships, commitments, policies, and investments, all aimed at reducing our risk to hazards. The county held a mitigation town hall. We had nearly 100 folks participating, where we had good discussion on 4 major topics, including blight, flooding, capabilities and capacity, and utility issues. And from that, we were able to come out with some good actions. Those next steps are the actions that we'll look to implement. Broadly described include data building, education, outreach and awareness, capacity and capability building. That will come in the forms of looking at policies, regulations, training, and then looking at structure, infrastructure, and natural systems protection projects. In terms of implementing, the county does have a story map where people can take a look at the different hazards and their exposure by municipality. You can reach it using that QR code. And lastly, well, not lastly, but the hazard mitigation plan is now available for public review. We have a 30-day review period that we're required to have. I will send some additional information out to the press about that, and we'll put it out on our social media channels and on the county's website. But again, there's a 30-day window for this. From there, then FEMA will also review it, as will FEMA. Once FEMA is completed with their review, they'll provide to us an approval pending adoption, and then the county and then any participating municipalities will also have to approve the plan. Lastly, we move to implementation, which is by far the most important part of this planning effort. As you all know, we did receive additional funding through FEMA in the tune to $250,000 from BRIC funding specifically for implementation. And while we've not settled on the specific activities, broadly speaking, those activities include our focus on capacity and capability building related to blight and flooding. But there'll be more coming to you at a later date on that. That's all I have on that.
And the only thing on our new business, I do want to mention about drought. People need to conserve water as much as they can across our county, because there's wells going dry in municipalities. People are having to drill new wells. There was one that was just drilled, they're drilling it in West Penn. They went down over 1,000 feet into water. You know, so we're in definitely, we need rain bad. So just wanted to put it out there so people know to consider. Also, the county is doing a toy drive for Toys for Tots, Dusters Delivers Christmas, and the Salvation Army in Tamapa. Those toys can be dropped off at the controller's office and the commissioner's office. I'm encouraging anybody that can give to give, because, you know, times are hard right now with the way the economy is, so there's kids out in our county that won't get a Christmas present, and this might be their only one, so I'm hoping everybody will participate as much as they possibly can.
No, I agree with that, but I also like to give thank yous to Susan and Wayne, thank you, and John. Point blank, I know this process has been a long process through this, but again, living a disaster in your community, when I was mayor, when our town was flooded at that time, you know that when you try to implement plans, usually when it's an emergency, then you can go in the drill. This is hopefully to think outside the box, think ahead of things, of what's a hazard and what a risk out there within the community and county-wide, to hopefully implement them before an emergency happens. And again, I know that we've gone through this a number of times. Every 10 years, we need to update it, and so it's a good process. And to take a heed, as you can see, some of the top movers have changed within those things. Blight has been a constant, which continues to not just make the eyesore, but also on things with fire or whatever, rodents, disease, all those types of things, which we keep working very, very hard on which a lot of times our program with our blighted issues have definitely increased with some good funding that have come through our senator and also our legislators, so which is hopefully that continues. As I think Representative Dvorak said the one time when he had people in from Harrisburg, said this is almost like ground zero sometimes, you know. So to hopefully change that, and it has been. As you see in different parts of the county, people are trying to revitalize, to take these issues at heart and to work hard at them, and that's what we need to continue. But again, I want to thank all of you and the whole team that have got together and to put this plan together. So congratulations and thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Salary board. Board of any executive sessions?
We're done.
Public comment? Human resources, personnel action.
Only one item, that is in tax assessment, set salary for Tanya Kovacs as deputy chief assessor at a rate of $38,570, effective date 11/25/24.
I have a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Commissioner Fedora,
Yes.
Commissioner Heatherington, Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Second Deputy Controller Copeland.
Yes.
Is there any new business? Get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, no, that was for last. I was trying to calculate the amount of okay. No, go ahead. Any two. Okay. Let's stop like 14, yeah. Okay.
What are you?